A Mongolian proverb says, "Do not despise a weak cub, he may turn out to be the son of a tiger." Genghis Khan conquered half the world and became the Great Khan, in other words, the emperor of the world. But before achieving unprecedented heights and achievements, he experienced hunger, humiliation, and slavery. In 1172, Yesugei Batagur and his son Temujin went to the Merkit tribe to find him a wife. Having made a stop at the Rodi Ungirat tribe, the boy met a girl named Borte. In the evening, he told his father that he did not want to fulfill his family duty and look for a bride in the Merkit tribe because he wanted to find her here. The next morning, Temujin chose Borte as his future wife, promising to return for her in 5 years. Having gone home, Yesugei was silent for a long time, but still praised his son for making the choice on his own, since the choice of a wife is the most important in the life of every man, and one should not listen to advice here. At night, the group stopped at the rocks as it began to rain and thunder, which the Mongols were very afraid of. While in shelter, Temujin turned out to be the only one who is not afraid of lightning, because the majestic force of nature evokes respect, not fear, in him. The next morning, the group continued on their way, and soon stopped at a parking lot. There were enemies nearby, but according to Mongol customs, bloodshed is prohibited here. Soon, one of the enemy's servants brought a cup for Yesugei to drink their drink, showing respect. Reciprocating, he sent his cup to the enemy. The assistant suggested that the servant try the drink, but the Khan refused, not wanting to break the custom. He drank the cup to the bottom, but it soon turned out that its contents were poisoned. Yesugei felt bad, but the man tried to continue on his way. A few minutes later, he fell from his horse and left the world, asking his son to continue his work. Upon returning home, Temujin saw a terrible picture, as the head of the Taichiut clan attacked the families, trying to drive them out of their homes. Targutai stole all the cattle that belonged to them and took the lives of many who tried to resist. He wanted to take the life of Temujin, since he is the son of the enemy, but did not do this, adhering to customs. The Mongols cannot execute children, and Targutai accepted this, postponing the inevitable until the enemy's son grew up. Little Temujin warned Targutai that he would take his life first, avenging his tribe. Temujin became a slave to Targutai, performing difficult and humiliating work. While in chains, the boy met an old seer, the only person who turned out to be kind to him. Before leaving for the next battle, Targutai checked Temujin's height to see if he was ready for execution. Realizing that the boy was still too young, he left, and the old man released Temujin so that he could escape and gain freedom. As soon as the rain and thunder began, the boy left the camp and went to the destroyed temple, where he was able to pray to God, asking for strength for subsequent battles. Seeing the image of a wolf, Temujin was not afraid, taking it as a sign from above. Dozens of difficult trials lay ahead of him, but the boy was ready for them. While traveling through endless grasslands in the fall and winter, Temujin fell through the ice and nearly drowned, but survived, stronger than ever before. 1186. Having grown up, Temujin went to the Ungirat tribe to meet his wife. Despite the fact that they had not seen each other for more than 10 years, Borte agreed to go with her husband wherever he said, because she loved him and wanted to be with him until the end of her days. Having received a dowry in the form of a sable fur coat, Temujin went home to meet his mother and introduce her to Borte. The Taichiut clan attacked the settlement to destroy it and find Temujin. He and his wife were lucky as the couple left to have some alone time in the field. In the morning, the Taichiuts, led by Targutai, tracked down the loving couple and tried to take their lives. While fleeing, Temujin received an arrow in the back, and it seemed that he's going to leave the world. Sacrificing, Borte sent her horse with her wounded husband across the river, and she herself surrendered to Targutai. The leader of the Taichiuts was happy about this, since the late Yesugei Baratur once stole his bride, and now he will do the same to his son's wife. Several years later, Temujin, fully recovered from his injury, dreaming of taking revenge on Targutai and returning Borte, he turned to his best friend for help. Jamuka considered it ridiculous to start a war for the sake of a woman, because the Mongols do not do that. But he agreed to help Temujin. At the same time, Jamuka proposed starting the war in a year, believing that this date would be more successful for bloody battles. Lacking an army of his own, Temujin agreed to his friend's terms. A year later, Temujin, Jamuka, and his army went to the lands of the Taichiut clan. As it turned out, they were ready for war and were hiding behind rocks, using the terrain for a sneak attack. During the bloody massacre, thousands of soldiers lost their lives. It seemed that the war would be lost, but Temujin saved Jamukh, taking the life of the enemy who attacked him. Taking the Taichiut mask, Temujin entered their camp to find Borte. After taking the lives of several guards, he found a pregnant wife and proclaimed his unborn son as his future heir. In the evening, Temujin and Jamuka celebrated their victory, during which they managed to destroy the enemy clan. Jamukha invited his friend to become his assistant, but Temujin refused, since every warrior has his own path, and he must become a Khan. Having defeated the enemy, the Mongols took possession of everything that could be found in their settlement. Jamukha took half of the loot for himself, and Temujin showed nobility by taking only a tenth for himself and distributing the rest to his soldiers. Jamukha's brother warned him that this could lead to problems, but the clan leader refused to listen to him, trusting Temujin completely. In the morning, Temujin and his warriors set off to return home as quickly as possible. Waking up, Jamukha noticed that some warriors had disappeared. The brother reported that they had gone over to Temujin's side and went with him. Considering this a personal insult, Jamukha followed his friend to return the soldiers. Temujin recalled that the Mongols were free to choose a Khan, which outraged his comrade and his brother, who considered this an ugly act. Techara promised to take revenge on the traitors and steal the horses he gave them. A few months later, Techara, Jamukha's brother, tried to keep his promise and steal a herd of horses from Temujin's domain. The guards went after him and took the life of his younger brother Jamukha, which provoked the start of the war. Realizing the mistake, the soldiers were ready to accept execution, but Temujin left them alive because they defended their home and did the right thing. Soon, Targutai visited Jamukha and offered to join forces to catch Temujin and take revenge on him for the funeral of people close to them. Sometime later, the soldiers informed Temujin that Targutai, Jamukha, and their army were coming after them. They move much faster and outnumber Temujin's army, so there is no point in running. Realizing that they cannot hide, Temujin proposes to occupy the high ground on Mount Gulegu. Protecting the children and family, he assigned guards to them and ordered them to continue their journey. 100 Mongols led by Temujin remained to stop Jamukha's 1,000-strong army. Having met the enemy, Temujin fought for several hours without lowering his sword. He lost everyone but continued to fight, even when completely surrounded. Having destroyed the hundreds of enemies, Temujin found himself surrounded and fell exhausted to the ground. Having become slaves of Jamukha, he refused to ask for mercy as he was ready to accept punishment and lose his life. Considering that this was not humiliating enough, Jamukha sent his former friend into slavery. A year later, Temujin found himself at the Tangut market, where he was noticed by a local leader. The old seer warned that Temujin is a leader, not a slave, and should not be exploited. The king accepted this with ridicule and turned Temujin into a slave, locked in a cage, like an animal in a zoo. Sometime later, the old seer came to the cage and asked Temujin not to destroy his temple when he conquered the whole world. Temujin agreed, but in return asked to take his wife a bone from a white crow, proving that he was still alive. The seer accepted the conditions and set off, but a few weeks later, he fell asleep in an eternal sleep in the middle of the road. Despite this, Borte found the bone and realized that her husband was in captivity and needed help. Having waited for the slave trader, the woman offered him her body in exchange for a safe passage to the Tangut kingdom. A few weeks later, she arrived at the king's domain and went to the platform, where she appeared before her husband, hiding her face with a black cloth. At night, Borte gave some present to the guards and gave away the precious jewelry to get the key to the cage. Having received the key, Temujin freed himself and jumped into the pit with wild dogs. The animals, feeling strong, were afraid of him and did not attack the man, allowing him to get out. Soon, Temujin's family left the Tangut kingdom. On the way to safety, the man finally met his children, after which the couple spent the night together, so that the number of heirs would continue to grow. The family spent the next few days together, walking in nature and cooking meat over a fire. Realizing that his true purpose lay elsewhere, Temujin left his family and promised to return to them later. The man went to the destroyed temple to appeal to the god and get approval for his plans. He realized that the Mongols needed to be united into one big Khanate, a big empire, and the easiest way to do this was through force. Guided by rules and regulations, Temujin decided that it was best to punish crimes with execution. Any violation of the rules is a reason to execute a person who betrayed his faith, his people, and customs. All this led to the fact that, in 1196, Temujin began to be known as Genghis Khan, a great leader who gathered thousands of warriors under his command. Despite this, many Mongols continued to serve Jamukha without recognizing Temujin as their leader. Realizing that the only way to resolve the conflict was through war, Temujin and Jamukha met on the battlefield. Genghis Khan's army was inferior in numbers, but turned out to be more cunning. With a well-aimed shot of an arrow, Genghis Khan warned Jamukha that he should not fight, but he was not afraid of this. As a result, horsemen with swords attacked the enemy legion, after which they began to retreat. The hidden archers executed their enemies and their own who tried to escape from the battlefield. Angry, Jamukha decided to unleash all his might on the enemy army, but a moment before the collision, clouds covered the sky. Heavy rain, thunder, and lightning scared the Mongols, but not Genghis Khan. Temujin ordered the soldiers to fight, as a result of which they defeated the enemy and captured Jamukh. Targotai's people executed the leader and brought his body to Genghis Khan to earn his trust. They violated Mongol customs, so Temujin ordered their execution. Jamukha could have become a slave or lost his life, but Temujin spared his life and released the enemy, still calling him a friend. In the evening, Genghis Khan told his wife that his war was not over, since there was still a lot of work ahead. Despite this, he loves her and the children, so he will always return home. The old man who took care of the boy found himself among the enemy army, but was accepted by Temujin. He gave him land and made him his assistant, asking for advice. In 1206, Temujin was proclaimed ruler of all the Mongols, Genghis Khan of the Great Steppe. He conquered half the world, and the Tangut kingdom was wiped off the face of the earth. At the same time, the Great Khan kept his word to the seer, keeping the monastery safe and sound. Thank you for watching and your supports for likes and subscriptions. See you very soon.